I'm Maizy Lawnicki. I'm an environmental justice advocate based in Washington, D.C. I just graduated with my master's from Northeastern University in public policy with an environmental focus.
So growing up a Gen Zer, how early on would you say you began to develop a passion for the environment and the other issues that you've come to work on professionally now today?
I would say definitely around middle school, going into high school, because I'm from a really small old coal mining town in rural Illinois, and I saw how it was left to its own devices in a lot of ways. We were never afforded, like electrification or renewable energy. And I would go to the city and wonder why that was the way it was. And then as I got older and into more volunteer and into college, I figured it out and I was like, this is shocking and these people need opportunities too. So that was what really kickstarted me into it.
When you were in high school and then as you got to college, what kind of sense meeting other young people from all over the country that shared this kind of same passion and concern, how formative was that also as an influence?
It was extremely formative, especially to become acquainted with people from the city or the suburbs and just see and hear about the different ways that they grew up. And one of my best friends I ended up meeting, I found out lives 40 minutes away from an even smaller town that has even less resources. So going to visit her family and her over the holidays and just see like even the difference between my town, which is pretty small compared to hers, just inspired me to go into this even harder.
When did you first become aware of NUAC and their important work? And what made you want to do an internship there versus other organizations I'm sure you were being offered if you had wanted to go there instead?
A little bit of a funny story. The person I mentioned, my friend, is actually my roommate, and her mom knows Katrina. And when I was looking into internships, mentioned NUAC and told me to look into it. And after I did, I was like, this is awesome. And I do want to be a part of it. And I set up a meeting with Katrina. And that's it went from there. And I just knew after talking to her and Erin that that's where I wanted to be. Upon getting there, I just saw the different communities that they worked with, and it was amazing to me, like from a national perspective, to be able to work with all of these different communities and learn how to speak to them too. I think that was really important for me, especially being in policy oriented work, to learning how to communicate effectively with these different communities and see that a lot of them all want the same thing, but they go about asking for it in a different way, and we need to go about answering in a different way sometimes to get it done, but that across the nation, everyone can benefit from it and the work that does. One of the things that I did during my time at NUAC was go to a community action agency and talk to some of the weatherization people who walked me through the process, showed me some of the tools that they used to figure out how and if they could weatherize homes. And that was one of the first things that propelled me when I was writing my case study for NUAC about supplemental funding for LIHEAP during COVID, to really hone in on how much of that could be done because of the supplemental funding that was available that is now not.
Within that case study that you did, please talk about some of the ways that you really discovered and became convinced for yourself that LIHEAP was as important a program as it has proven to be for so many different communities geographically all over the country.
Part of my case study was finding 5 geographically diverse states to interview to see how they spent the money differently, since it is a block grant. And what really convinced me was just hearing all the different strategies used in the different areas when they had the supplemental funding. For example, in Washington, they had a more intense cooling program that allowed customers to have some sort of option. They were allowed 3 cooling units to choose from within a certain amount of money, and that was delivered to their houses. And I thought that was really cool because it gives some autonomy and authority to the customer. And I think that's really important, especially when you're trying to get people in those rural areas who are a little bit more apprehensive to that kind of stuff involved. And then going to New York and talking, what do you guys do about rentals? Because you have such a high rental percentage compared to a lot of the other states that but that you do this program, and to hear about how they distributed that differently during COVID was really interesting. And just to hear about all of these great ideas that were working or on their way to working, just to be cut short because a lack of funding from the federal government. That really made me push for it and be passionate about it. What tied into that was I lobbied on the Hill with NUAC during Like Action Day in February of this year to lobby for funding, and I was able to shadow Katrina and see how she talked to different representatives from different states, red or blue. And I think that really played into my case study in terms of my discussion, because I understood that these people are still from those states, and sometimes you have to talk to them like you would talk to those constituents. And if you can relay a message to them that they can then relay to their constituents that makes sense, that's more impactful than just giving them all these facts and numbers. Like, if you don't say it to them in a way that compels them or makes sense to them for their state, they might not listen. And I think that the storytelling aspect's really important. I was able to interview 5 LAHEAP administrators, and that gave me connections that I didn't think I would have. And then I did a session at NUAC's annual conference, and 3 of those people were in the crowd, and they all talked to each other. And then we were talking to everyone else around us. And I think just to even become acquainted with the people around you to share ideas, like, hey, I'm from Illinois, you're from Colorado, what are you doing? They exchange ideas and then implement some of those into what their work. And I thought that was just amazing that I could be a part of that.
What new roles within energy advocacy are energizing you lately that you could tell us about?
I'm currently working with Michael Bracey on a storytelling cohort for LIHEAP that will work with NUAC and hopefully be able to work with LIHEAP.org on their leadership channel to get more storytelling advocacy going, and also update some of the language because it is a little old. And I think personally, as a Gen Zer, we need to get some more young people in this game. And I think that having diverse and younger voices will amplify the message and reach those audiences and get them more involved.
As a bonus, before we go, where can people check out your case study?
Yeah, so my case study is called Lessons Learned from COVID Supplemental LIHEAP Funding. It's a very long title, but it lives on NUAC's website under the Take Action bar, and you can go to LIHEAP Action Toolkit, and it's